What are you going to regret on your deathbed? What's really going to be important?
You're the founder and CEO of Gethin Gyms and Unmatched Supplements, author of 6 books, and your transformation programs have been used to help over 150 million people.
When I gave up motocross, I kind of lost my way because my identity was adrenaline. I remember getting arrested, just seeing the look of disappointment on my dad's face hit me so hard.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to get into weight training a little bit more, but I want to study it. That completely turned my life around. I'm going to risk everything. I'm going to move to Venice, California and see if I can get myself a WIDA publication contract. How far are you willing to really go to those dark depths of where failure really is? I was one of those people that convinced myself that I was dieting, I was training, I was sleeping early, hydrating, but this was next level. You know, the one thing that disturbs me, a lot of these supplements aren't healthy. I look at food as going to heal me or harm me, and I think we should look at supplements the exact same way.
Kris Gethin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, brother.
So you're a professional bodybuilder, trainer, and entrepreneur. You're the founder and CEO of Gethin Gyms and Unmatched Supplements, which is your new supplement company, author of 6 books, and your transformation programs have been used to help over 150 million people worldwide.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. You got a great place here, brother.
Oh, thanks, man. I was glad that y'all got to come out and see it and get to hang a little bit last night.
Yeah, we'll be back.
Good. Anytime, man. Anytime when the house is done, y'all can stay in the guest house and you have this whole guest house to yourself.
Oh, we're getting married here.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we decided,
Oh, dude,
yeah.
I love that.
We'll let you know when it's going to happen.
Let me know. Will, who's the property manager, I think he'd left last night, but he's got the long hair. He got married here last September.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so for friends, we definitely will hook you up.
Oh, there you go. Tell Richard Branson we're off. We're coming here instead.
Were y'all thinking about going to Branson's Island?
Well, we noticed that he does have those events available on Nectar Island and stuff like that. Because we got married a few years ago, but we still have yet to have the celebration because we got married during COVID. We're in a courthouse with masks on. It's like, it wasn't quite right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that would actually be a lot of fun. So just let me know.
Okay.
We should be done around February or so.
No pressure, man.
Yeah. So we'll get her done. So, tell me a little bit about your background, like where you're originally from and how you got into fitness.
Sure. So from Wales, grew up in Wales on a farm. So I'm a farm boy at heart. And from a young age, about 6 years old, I started racing motocross. So my family was all into bikes and motorbikes. And I got my first motorbike at about 5-6 years old. Little 50cc BSA, and absolutely fell in love with it. And my dad put me in a race. And I remember that very first race like it was yesterday at 6 years old. Like I remember leading the first lap, and I don't know how I did it. It was just based on adrenaline and nothing to do with abilities whatsoever. So my head was way ahead of my abilities. And, I remember wiping out, crashing big time, scared the crap out of me. But after that crash and getting away from the race, I thought, man, I loved that. It was the adrenaline. And I felt that's where my identity belonged. So I raced motocross then for about 13 years. And then when I gave up that, I got into downhill mountain biking for a race for a few years. That was a new sport back then, relatively new. Absolutely loved that. So that was my kind of intro into physical training. I suffered asthma very, very bad growing up. I got croup as a young child, almost died, rushed to hospital. And I'm sure that created some sort of scarring in my lungs. And so I always struggled, racing. And I just had to train a lot just so I could finish a race. Sometimes I remember going across the finish line and the bike would just collapse on me and I just didn't have the strength to pick it back up. Everything was left on the track. And I absolutely loved that. And when I gave up motocross and then downhill mountain biking, I kind of lost my way for a while because my identity was adrenaline and that was it. And I didn't have the adrenaline. So just went down a path of like full on drugs and alcohol and just partying crazy and doing crazy stuff. And I remember getting arrested and being taken to my parents' home because they wanted to search my parents' house and knocking at the door. at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and just seeing the look of disappointment on my dad's face just hit me so hard.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is definitely not the route that I want to go. So that's when I decided to have a long, hard look at myself. And I was dealing with a lot of pain, back pain, because I got a severe curvature of my spine from motocross. And I had a lot of injuries from that, and downhill mountain biking, like immense amount of injuries, hence all the stem cells. And, you know, I fell into depression because of the identity, because of the pain I was dealing with. And I realized, okay, let's just hit one thing at a time. Let's try to get this back sorted. So, you know, physiotherapy, went to osteopaths, massage therapists. And it wasn't until I started doing the resistance training that I started feeling some alleviation of that pain. And then the symptoms associated to that pain started to dissipate. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to get into weight training a little bit more, but I want to study it. So I went to college then for 3 years to study international health and sports therapy. And, you know, that completely turned my life around, because, you know, I don't know if I'd be here talking to you right now if I hadn't found the gym and then the health aspect of everything going around it. Because like even when I was racing motocross, I'd buy bodybuilding magazines, but not with an interest of bodybuilding, because I had to keep my weight down as much as possible to race the bikes.
Right.
But I looked at these bodybuilding publications like comic books. I wasn't into comic books so much, maybe Judge Dredd a little bit, and the old school like Captain America. But these were my real life comic book heroes. And I absolutely loved that. So I felt like, you know, that was some sort of message to say that this is something that I'd be doing later on down the line. And I realized I had to get out of the social circle that I was in, and that college qualifications that I got were internationally recognized. So then that took me overseas. It took me to the US to begin with, worked on cruise liners, and then further from there, different countries.
Yeah. So you went to school, you know, for fitness.
Yeah.
And your first job was in America.
Yeah.
After that.
Yes.
And cruise lines. What were you doing with that?
So I started off, because during this sports therapy course, I actually got all my massage qualifications as well. So Swedish, sports, remedial, everything, aromatherapy. I went onto the cruise liners to begin with as a personal trainer, because I thought, this is my ticket out of here. I'm out. See ya. I appreciate Wales a lot more now I'm older, but as a youngster, I was like, I just want to get out of here. When I say youngster, in my 20s. But then I realized the US is a tipping culture, and they were tipping the massage therapists a lot more than the personal trainers. So I applied for that position and started doing more sports massage on the cruise liners. I did that for 8 months. And then from there, I had an opportunity to go to Australia. So then I upped everything and left and went to Australia, started doing personal training there and competing in natural bodybuilding, drug-tested bodybuilding shows. Really enjoyed that. And after 3 years of doing basically personal training there, got a job in Australia within 24 hours of landing. It was phenomenal. So, wow, this is a land of opportunity. And when I was doing this personal training, this was outside of a gym. I thought, well, I want to do it more remote. And I would do my cardio in the morning with these trifold leaflets that I'd created, advertising my mobile personal training business that I had yet to create. And I started getting some calls. So I started training people on the beaches, in the park, in their homes. So I didn't have to go to the gym anymore. And I would only offer like a 12-week transformation, an 18-week transformation, or 6 months. I would not offer like personal training.
Sure. Because
I wanted to get those before and after pictures out of my clients, because I knew, number one, that would give them a sense of urgency, and number two, it'd be marketing collateral for myself. And I did that for 3 years and saved everything up to purchase my first gym then in Australia. So now I was training people in the gym.
How old were you when you first purchased the first gym?
I would have been probably late 20s, maybe. Yeah, late 20s.
As you were building everything in your 20s, after your education, went to America, then went to Australia, did you always have like an entrepreneurial mind with it?
No, I just had I had work ethic more than anything, because I grew up on a farm and being a witness to how hard my parents worked, like unbelievably hard. like crazy. Like it's 7 days a week. You work on a farm, you don't get time off really.
Right.
It's, even Christmas Day, we were working, I would work for sure, And I think it's just the work ethic more than anything. I just couldn't sit still. I have a little bit of anxiety in me. I wake up with a bit of anxiety. Now that can have a negative, but it can also have a positive. It's very hard for me to lie on a beach for 30 minutes.
Yeah. So when did you decide you wanted to open a gym?
I think it was like probably halfway through dealing with the traffic in Sydney. Even though I loved, I started surfing a little bit, so I'd surf in between clients and swimming. I loved that beach lifestyle, but I just wanted a little bit of stability because now I'm competing in natural bodybuilding. I wanted to see how far I could take my physique as well. And I thought, well, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
And, I have a passion for MMA and hence why, we'll talk about it later, Caged Muscle, the magazine, because I was into caged fighting because that's what it was called back then. And I was into bodybuilding. So I combined the both. And in this gym, we had Muay Thai on one side of the facility and transformation, basically, facility on the other side. So I started doing both.
Yeah. So, your approach definitely was different because you were doing the 12-week, 16-week, transformations. The idea, though, that you wanted the before and after so you could have your marketing material, that's, very entrepreneurial. So, at some point, did you decide, okay, I'm going to look for opportunities within what my passion is to actually make a good living? And if so, what was that like catalyst?
I think it was Bill Phillips, Body for Life, because he had just come out with his, he had Muscle Media he had Muscle Media magazine. I think it was Muscle Media, yeah. And he'd come out with a Body for Life book that was around 2001, and he had the DVD as well. A lot of the time the DVD wouldn't play. But that was very inspiring for me because that was the kind of physique that I was aspiring to, because I saw like Bill Phillips, the Tito Raymonds, the Mike O'Hearns in the magazines. That's what appealed to me more than the IFBB Pro bodybuilders. That seemed more attainable to me. And it just seemed a little bit more attractive. And just seeing those before and after transformations, I could relate to that. And I knew that a lot of other people would relate to that. If they see me transform, then they think, you're a bodybuilder or you do this for a living, and they come up with their own excuses and justify them. Right. When they see a single mother of 3 kids or someone who holds down 2 jobs, that's somebody they could relate to. So I knew that if I had a plethora of these transformations that people could relate to, the chances were they'd sign up. Like they used to walk into the gym and I'd say, oh, is this all you got? Because it's a very small facility. It's a personal training studio. I'm like, how many leg extensions do you need, dude? And then as soon as I'd show them the photo album that I had of the before and afters, they're like, where do I sign?
Yeah.
So I knew that I had something there. And I became a Body for Life coach as well. So I would have some of those referrals. And 2 of my clients, a male and a female, actually won the Body for Life challenges in Australia and New Zealand.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so you open your gym, you're getting these great results. What was the evolution after that?
I wanted to reach out to more people. And, there wasn't internet back then. And, it was basically publications. I failed everything in school. I had no interest in being in school whatsoever, none. I was very easily distracted. I was daydreaming. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be on my motorbike. I wanted to be at home. Didn't want to be in school. I had no interest in religious education or anything that we were being taught. So I failed everything. So I knew, okay, if I'm going to write for publications, I'm going to have to teach myself. And at that time, I felt like I was able to retain content because now I'm learning things that I want to learn. So I'd retain it so much more easier.
Right.
And so I bought Merriam-Webster's book on journalistic writing and taught myself how to write. I purchased a camera and had some lessons from my good friend Gary Phillips, who's the editor-in-chief of Flex magazine and Muscle and Fitness then in Australia, who happened to be from the UK, so we kind of connected. And then I started submitting content to publications. I knew that if I had pictures to go with the content that I was writing, it was much easier to get that content published, because sometimes they'd have to work with a photographer to get the pictures to go with the content, blah, blah, blah. So I started getting those pieces published in magazines basically around the world, bit by bit.
What was the first major piece you got published? Which magazine?
It was a magazine that is no more. It was called Planet Muscle.
Okay.
Planet Muscle. That was the first publication.
And was it like a transformation before and after?
No, it was all on calf training.
Oh.
That was because I had really, really bad calves when I started training. And I remember a friend of mine who knew nothing about bodybuilding. He said, "You've got quite developed quads there, but why are your calves so skinny?" And that was the best thing he could have ever said to me, because it scarred me, probably kept me up for a week. And I did everything that I could to turn that weakness into a weapon. And basically that content piece was all about how to build your calves from that weakness to a weapon.
And did you start writing for more magazines after that? How did that evolve, and where did that lead you to next?
Yeah, so I started writing for a lot of magazines, a lot of European magazines, and a lot of these magazines are no longer there, but they were paying very, very well. It'd be like $1,200 to $1,500 for an article with images. And I was like, wow, I could punch out 10 of these articles a week. Let's go. You know, and I'd be very enthusiastic, and I enjoyed it. And I wanted to make these content pieces kind of hardcore, but humorous as well, because, you know, fitness bodybuilding is boring. And there was a guy who eventually ended up employing me over at Weeder Publications, Peter McGough, rest in peace. And his content was very, very humorous. I don't know if you know Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear. So when he writes his content, it's very humorous, because cars could be kind of boring as well. So I took little bits from these people and applied it to my pieces.
Yeah, so I mean, you're getting $1,200, $1,500 an article, submitting 10 at a time.
Yeah, I was doing as many as I could.
Yeah, you're doing pretty good there. When did you decide that you wanted to open up your own magazine?
So first of all, to go back a little bit, I decided, you know what, I'm going to risk everything. I'm going to move to Venice, California, and see if I can get myself a Weeder publication contract with the US AMI. So I packed up everything, sold the gym, went over there, and I worked basically for 6 months just submitting content, basically making a pain of myself and submitting the content to Peter McGough until 6 months later he said, okay, come on up, let's have a meeting. And I got that contract then for a couple of years. But then I realized a lot of the content, even though I was a huge fan of Flex Magazine and Muscle and Fitness and what Weeder had accomplished, and I got to have breakfast with Joe Weeder, and you know, he was a hero of mine. So that was a real cool time. And bodybuilding was very much thriving at that time as well. And I was living in the Mecca of Venice Beach and training out of Gold's and still competing at this time as well, except everyone's 10 times the size of me. And I realized, because this content was being filtered how I wouldn't really necessarily agree with, I decided I'm going to see if I can put out my own publication here. So I went and bought an industrial-sized printer. It cost several $1,000s used, and put it in my 2-bedroom apartment in Marina del Rey. And I remember at 2:00 in the morning, the first publication being delivered to me. The warm paper felt like I'd had a baby delivered to me. And I had Dorian Yates, who's a good friend of mine. He was contributing to the magazine. I had a few, Linda Murray, who's Miss Olympia. She's contributing to the publication. I had Dorian on the front page of the first cover. And there's a guy called Robert Naylan, who had a lot of unseen images, who's based in Australia, who I'd got to know, of Arnold, of Tom Platz, of Franco Columbo, all the greats that he allowed me to use in that publication. So I was very, very lucky. And I enjoyed that. You know, I kept it, for the most part, the hardcore pieces, I kept in black and white, because I really liked that. And the more natural, fitness-based, educational Q&A, that was all color.
Yeah, running a magazine is a whole other animal.
Yeah, it was tough. I didn't enjoy a lot of it, because a lot of it was marketing and you'd have to get advertisers on board. I didn't like that. And I was pretty much doing all of that.
Yeah, I had a magazine when I was 18 called Submission Fighter Magazine. And, back then, there was Grappling Magazine that would come out every 6 months. There was something called Full Contact Fighter, and then Submission Fighter.
Yeah.
It went on for a while. It's a lot of work to put out a monthly magazine. Work with all the writers, and that's where I met Eddie Bravo back in the day.
Oh, right.
I was 18, and I flew out to a King of the Cage, and I was like, "Oh, Eddie, I'm Ed Clay," and he's like, I was 18. They're like, what in the world? I thought you were like 40. I'm like, nope, I just got out of high school last year,
So you had quite the entrepreneurship spirit from a young age as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've always wanted to have my own businesses and those
That's
type
cool.
of things. Yeah.
And then the later publications, you had the Fighters Only, Train Hard, Fight Easy. You had quite a few come out after.
Yeah, well, that was, Train Hard, Fight Hard. Yeah.
Train Hard, Fight Hard.
Yeah, that was OTM. That was Scotty's. So he had the online publication. OTM was like an online magazine. And and then Scotty videoed all over the world. He lived in Brazil for 3 years. So he's one of the first Americans to go out there and just document. And so, he would sell his videos. He did really well for a long time.
Right. Awesome.
But, back then though, the MMA market, the jiu-jitsu market was so small. It was in
Very niche.
infancy, really.
Yeah.
And, so that's how we know everybody, because it was such a small community back then that, you just kind of get to know it. I'm sure it's kind of like that in bodybuilding though too. Once you get to a certain level, all the people that are kind of in it.
Yeah.
And
that's what I love about those kind of sports, because you're able to engage with all those people.
Yeah.
Like we'll be at an event in a couple of days' time. A lot of the top pro bodybuilders will be there, but they're like buddies, you know, where if you go to a lot of sports, whether it be football, basketball, I don't know if there's that same camaraderie, because you can't really engage with those people. So I like these niche kind of sports, as big as like MMA is now.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild how big it's gotten. And what you realize is people are just people, and you build trust with people the same way. You build relationships with people the same way. If you're a good person, you'll build those relationships. If you're a bad person, you're probably not going to build relationships. And it is really cool, especially for MMA now. Looking back 20, 25 years ago, I guess I started in '97. So I don't know, almost 30 years ago, seeing where it is, today, and, knowing a lot of the UFC champions personally, having those relationships where you saw them at the very beginning and they worked their way up, probably like you see with Mr. Olympia or through the professional bodybuilding. It's really gratifying, and you get to see what it takes to be very successful. And I think you mentioned this earlier, hard work. It's all about how much are you willing to grind it out.
Yeah.
How much has that been a part of what you've done, over the years?
Majority of it, vast majority of it, because you think about it, any athlete or any people, people that are training or working to be their best selves. A lot of us convince ourselves that we're working hard or that we train hard, but really it's probably about 2% that do. Like I have clients send me videos all the time. Oh yeah, I train to failure. I train hard. I'm like, it looks like a warm-up, man. And that's not me being an ass. It's just, it's the truth. How far are you willing to really go to those dark depths of where failure really is? And you have to encompass that pain and that discomfort and do the things that you don't want to do on the days that you don't want to do them. Consistently, all the time. And that's what leads to a lot of people's success. Of course, there's some people that have a lot of potential or very talented and gifted in certain ways, but the majority of us aren't. But can we work harder than those people? Possibly. So why not use that as your opportunity to move forward? Like when I was living in Venice, California, the amount of people and bodybuilders that had this mentality that you had to be in Venice to get noticed and get the sponsors and make it to the top, where you had people like Dorian Yates, he had the nickname The Shadow because no one would see him. He'd win the Olympia and no one would see him for the rest of the year, because that Monday after the Olympia, he's training legs and he's in his dungeon and no one's going to see him again. That hard work and that ethic got him noticed. And that's the mentality I like to go by.
Do you see that idea and that mentality kind of going away or getting less right
100%.
Now? Yeah, it's
100%. It's definitely, I hate to say it because I sound old when I say it. An old fuddy-duddy. Here we go. Another one of those geezers. But yeah, it's definitely becoming softer. I see it with clients. There's a lot of complaints. It's like, why didn't you do your cardio this morning? Well, it was raining. I'm like, you just told me that? You admitted to that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Your skin's waterproof, brother. You're okay. You can go out there. But those are the excuses that I'm starting to get now that I never had before. But it keeps me in a job.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed that training fighters, when I retired in 2012, that, people were getting softer and the fighters would the mentality of when I was coming up, there was no way I would make these excuses and, try to act like they were legitimate. But there were more and more, excuses that they thought were legitimate. And I thought to myself, well, maybe I don't want to do this anymore because I wasn't making a lot of money training fighters and I'd lost my passion. So it'd be one thing if I was making a great living just training fighters. I was making a living with my other businesses. And, I thought maybe the time for this has passed and, time to go on to something else.
Maybe you lost that passion because of a lot of these excuses, and it's like hard work at the end of the day. It's like, make my job a little bit easier. And speaking with your mother last night, when she was saying when she was working for American Airlines, she said, you didn't like not show up.
Right.
You didn't take a day off. Like chances are that you wouldn't be asked to come back in the following day because we were talking about, about travel. It's like, flights are delayed or cancelled more than they're on time now,
Yes.
and I wonder if it's because the employers just go, you know what, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, I mean, there is a thing in society right now where that's, acceptable. And, what do they call it? Quiet quitting, where you're really working at a job, but you're not really giving 110%.
Yeah.
And that's a new thing, as far as, maybe there were some employees in the past that were doing that, but to have articles written about it, like, oh, this is what we're doing, and it's really changed. And I think, as a country, as the United States, and as a world, those values of hard work are getting less and less taught. But it's also making it easier for guys like us,
For sure,
who are willing to grind.
For
because
sure,
it's never been easier to be successful.
Yeah, 100%. And I see that from a lot of people. I'm not shitting on America because I absolutely love this country. I wouldn't be living here if it wasn't the case. But I see so many people come from other countries where they have it so much harder. And if they're able to get residency here, they really take advantage of it. It's like the event that we're going to in a couple of days' time is owned by a good friend of mine who's from Sweden. And he's come over here some years ago and he's killed it with his clothing line, his gym, just taking that opportunity. But he really gives back as well. Really gives back to the community. He was just at an event here in Knoxville, gave out thousands of dollars, hundreds of free T-shirts and stuff like that. He really gives back, but he knows that there's many more opportunities here to take advantage of if other people are resting on their laurels.
Well, you think I read somewhere that an immigrant coming to the United States is 3 times more likely to become a millionaire than someone who was born here. And why is that? Well, someone coming here, they see the American dream. They want to. I mean, it's the land of opportunity. There's no more opportunity anywhere else in the world than there is in America. There's so much that we have here. And I think, growing up here, people might not realize that or take that for granted, or they believe what the media tells them, saying that they're, marginalized or oppressed, and these all these other circumstances are keeping you from being successful. When in fact, if you believe you can be successful, you can do anything that you want to do.
Yeah, 100%. That's probably why my wife was talking about getting a private jet yesterday. And then when you mentioned it, it's like, well, maybe that's going to open the windows now. You just never know. We only live under the ceilings that we believe, that a lot of us live under very short ceilings.
Yeah.
And that's, when I got into natural bodybuilding, the first competition that I did wasn't tested because I had no idea there was such a thing as natural bodybuilding shows. And that was in Wales. I managed to get second, and I was by far the smallest, but I was shredded. I didn't know what I was doing. I just did 0 carbs for 8 weeks. So this will work. And then when I moved to Australia, and I went and watched a natural show, and there was a guy called Mark Costanti that was guest posing. I was like, there is no way he is natural. Impossible. Guy was shredded, veins all over his abs. He became a good friend of mine, and I started training with him. We were training partners. I was like, okay, I've just been living under a ceiling that's way too low. This is next level. I was one of those people that convinced myself that I was dieting, I was training, I was sleeping early, hydrating, blah, blah, blah. But this was next level.
Yeah, the ceiling idea is really interesting because I think that the more people understood it, they would realize that it really is their thoughts that's keeping them from having incredible success. Even if I look back, over the last 25 years, I would have never thought 20 years ago I was going to be in this position, where CPI is, or running a hospital, or any of those things. Like, I didn't know anything about running a hospital, but now looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, I could do anything. Like, what do I want to do? Put my mind to it, work really hard, find really good people, trust the people that you're with to support you in reaching the goals that you all set together. And, but the ceiling that we put on ourselves probably is the greatest thing that's holding us back.
100%. Yeah. Like, you think about like a lot of the comments that you see online. If somebody's successful, someone's got a great physique, whatever, it's like, it has to be something other than their work.
Right.
It's like, it's their genetics, they're on steroids, they're gifted, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Those people are being controlled.
Yes.
They've controlled themselves by an environment that is not conducive to their future at all. And that's why I always tell people, are you going to control your environment, or are you going to be controlled by it? We travel a lot, travel 9 months of the year, but we're able to stick to our workouts, stick to our nutrition. However, how many people out there use that as an excuse?
Yes.
Because they've justified it and allowed themselves to get controlled by this excuse. Well, different strokes for different folks.
Right.
Like there's a guy called Mike O'Hearn that is very well known in the bodybuilding industry. He doesn't compete as a bodybuilder anymore, but absolute natural freak. I'd say 99% of the people out there think that he's not natural, but I choose to believe that he is natural, because that then opens the ceiling for me and my capabilities and what's possible. Will I reach that status? No way, but I could possibly get closer to it. And I think that's where people hold themselves back. They ridicule and justify their own excuses and their own complacency.
Yeah, the becoming a victim to the circumstances seems to be the thing that people do. All these circumstances, reasons why they can't, get the physique they want, or have the success they want at work, or this person is holding them back. It's them. But really not taking a look at within, that personal responsibility that, if it's to be, it's up to me. I've got to make it happen. Doesn't mean you can't bring along, because, to be really successful, you've got to have a great team. And you've got to have everybody else rise up with you and have a shared vision. But ultimately, I'm the one responsible for my life and nobody else. And I think that we're seeing people push that idea away and put everybody else as the reason that they're not successful.
Yeah, because it's the easy way out, isn't it?
Yes.
And I 100% agree with you that you put people in position that are much more powerful and stronger than you are in those certain areas. And, we say that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and that's why we see further. So that's what we do,
Yeah.
And I have so many weaknesses, but my strength is recognizing them and put people in those positions that can work on those strengths.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, understanding our weaknesses and not having an ego so much that we can't acknowledge it and put people in place that are better at those things.
Yeah.
What do you think it is that allows us to do something like that, but keeps others from doing it?
I don't know. I think it's just like, that person who broke the 4-minute mile the first time, nobody did. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, school kids are doing it.
Yeah, actually, for those that haven't heard the 4-minute mile, talk about that.
Yeah, so I can't remember what year it was, but, the first person that broke that 4-minute mile, everybody thought was an impossibility, that it couldn't be done. Nobody came close to that. But then very shortly after that 4-minute mile was broken, someone else broke it, then someone else. And then, like I said, some years later, we had people in school that were beating that. And now I don't even know what the record is right now. But we see that all the time. We see it in bodybuilding. You see the mass monsters, like Dorian Yates brought in mass monsters. And then all of a sudden, everyone got bigger.
Yeah.
Nobody thought that was possible until he brought it in. And we see it in a lot of other sports, And look at MMA compared to what it was 10 years ago. Yeah. We saw those calf kicks on Conor. It's like,
where did they come from?
Yeah, exactly. Now everyone's doing it, So, I think, people just need to see that to understand, okay, that is possible to me.
Yeah.
And then they do it. But some people will learn by observation. Other people, like I said, they have jealousy, whatever it is that's holding them back. They have negative connotations. Maybe they're just not putting out positivity in the universe.
Yeah.
Maybe they wake up and just stare at their phone, so they utilize all their dopamine and they don't have anything left. midway through the day to actually put it out into anything good.
Yeah, I think about this a lot because I think a lot of well-intended people in society are trying to help certain groups that might not have had the same situations that we had growing up. Good parents, learn certain values, etc. But they call them names like marginalized or oppressed, and they do it in a way we've got to help these groups of people. So they mean well by it. But my biggest fear of that is that those kids will actually believe it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's what's happening with society right now. Could we have a bunch of well-intended people trying to help people that might not have as much as them, using these words and names that those groups of people believe, and that becomes their ceiling. I can't be successful because I'm marginalized. I can't be successful because I'm oppressed. And they believe it, and they become those things that they're being told.
Yeah, because I'm not shitting on every therapist that's out there, because I know therapy can help a lot of people, but I speak to so many people who go to therapy and they're not getting any better.
Right.
They're not getting any better. And I believe it's because they're constantly bringing up the same issues.
Yeah.
Maybe some of them that they didn't really have, or they've grown into this monster that they just cannot shake now. Yeah. And a lot of people are dealing with this PTSD, which really isn't PTSD, but because they've been told this is the terminology that's going to be associated with it, it's like, oh, now I have PTSD.
Yes.
I can't do anything. I'm kind of disabled by this. Yeah, of course. And whatever you believe, you achieve. And if that's got a negative connotation associated around it, then you're not going to achieve.
Yeah. You think about mindset. And I think one of the things that we share in common is that mindset, understanding what we believe we achieve, understanding that thoughts are things and not wanting negative thoughts to go through our minds. And I think about, though, how do we get that idea, though, to the masses? Because I believe, as you were saying, the ceiling is what keeps people from really reaching their full potential, because the universe is the limit, and they're thinking the limit is the second story on their building. And how do you think we could get the masses to actually buy into kind of the way of thinking that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think they have to start small, because with the social platforms that are available now, we know that instant gratification is at an all-time high.
Yeah.
People scroll, they want results right now. They see some influencer online, they're like, I'm going to get those results next week. And it's just not going to happen that way. So they have this overwhelm and they give up, or they hurt themselves. And then ended up justification of their complacency or bad genetics or whatever it may be. But, for instance, if I have a client come to me and they're like, okay, I want to transform. What do I do? What pre-workout do I get? It's like, no. Let's look at your sleep first. Your sleep sucks. Let's bring that back. Let's see if we're consistent with that, because that's going to take time. And then we'll move on to the next week. Okay, you're on your phone. As soon as you wake up, you need to bookend your day. Hour after you wake up, hour after you go to bed. Okay, before you go to bed, no phone. And then we'll work on hydration. Let's work on getting up to a gallon of water a day. You live in a humid climate, blah, blah, blah. Meditation, grounding, earthing, sunlight. Then we start working with your nutrition, your training, supplementation. So it's bit by bit that they can apply. And then I create some patience within those guidelines, because everybody wants everything right now. And if they don't get those results as quick as they think they will, now they're disappointed and they'll fall off and give up. If they see these little baby steps of success, even though it may be a little bit slower in the beginning, it's going to be more transformational for their future. So I always say, this is going to be a boot camp. That's absolutely fine. But then this is for the longevity of your future. It's not a 12 or 16-week transformation, but we're going to have that sense of urgency for that future. And it just takes a little bit of patience, because the chances are you have none. Because a lot of us are, dopamine filled. We're not releasing enough oxytocin and serotonin to just chill and just be and look at everything in equanimity. But because we're just we want everything now today. And you're only setting yourself up for failure.
It'd be interesting to go through this exercise. So what I've been kind of dealing with is I do work all the time. I'm super, super focused. And when I get focused on something, sometimes it's difficult to shift to something else.
Of course.
And so, I've told myself the story, well, I'm just working so much. By the end of the day, I don't have time to work out. I start working as soon as I wake up.
You're coming with me to the gym tomorrow.
I love it. Yeah. So you understand you kind of understand my life. You've seen a little bit of it and you've been a part of the business. So you understand all that. What would you say to someone like me who has worked out, professional athlete in the past, but has a wall that I acknowledge, but I really am having trouble getting around or through the wall?
Yeah. What are you going to regret on your deathbed? That you didn't spend more time on you and your life and your lifeline, or building your businesses? Of course, building your businesses is what makes you happy and it gives you purpose, gives you affirmation. But what's really going to be important? Like I'm sure you've seen loved ones pass away. Like I was just at my dad's bedside for like nearly 5 weeks. I think it was 4 or 5 weeks. And it really makes you question things of what's really, really important. Of course, we love our materialistic possession. There's nothing wrong with that. I like wearing my watch. I like driving my car. Makes me feel good. But is that the most important thing? No. It's like, when I look at some food, I'm like, that looks fun, but is the fun food going to heal my future or harm my future? Okay, then I better not have that. I want to feel and heal my future, So I think it's the same sort of perspective, but it's very, very difficult. People who are go-getters that come to me, it's the hardest part is not getting them to do stuff. It's getting them to do less and just being themselves. The thing that I did some years ago, I did a 10-day Vipassana, silent retreat. No eye contact, no reading, no phone. It was just meditation, basically. No communication with anybody. It's meditation from like 5 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock in the evening. And that is it. And it's the hardest thing you could ever do. If we're similar, as I think we are, it was so difficult. And after 4 days, you see so many people leave because you have all these thoughts, past thoughts, future thoughts, questioning, anxiety, all surface. And now you have an opportunity to either allow that to control you or you view it and observe it in equanimity without any judgment whatsoever. Wow. But you have to allow it to become to the surface. You get emotional, start crying in there for no apparent reason. You start looking at things like, God, this isn't enough. Like we had a little pathway to walk in our break. I was like, God, this is tiny. Then after about 7, 8 days, you're like, this is more than enough. And now you're observing things like the sound of the wind going through the grass that you never noticed before. When I drove to this destination, I didn't really notice anything other than the road. On the way back, I'm looking at the clouds, the mountain. When I went into a gas station, I was like, too much noise, too much light. But then that actually helps you observe your reactions and what's important. And what is important is relationships, people that are dear to us. And, we've been given this vessel that we really should be taking care of, but we're marketed by the outside world to kind of destroy it.
Yeah.
And, it gives you great perspective to really slow things down. And, if you're having a conversation, you're not thinking about what can I say next, or I'm looking for my phone or whatever. You're really listening because you understand that these times don't last forever, dependent on what religion you believe in. I believe this is our only time, so just take advantage of us right now and ourselves, of course. Slow things down, baby.
Yeah, when you're going through the 10-day, that seems, even a couple days sounds intense. When you go through a 10-day silent retreat, at what point do you have an oh shit moment like, maybe I shouldn't have done this, or, the insecurities I'm sure come up throughout?
Yeah, it's like, for most people, I noticed that left, it was like the 4th or 5th day. For me, it was like the 7th day. Only had a few days left, but the time stands still because we're usually distracted with conversation, with meetings, with working out, with listening to music, whatever. Our senses are overloaded. That's why I love doing the sensory deprivation tank. It's a bit of a detox. First of all, you may get anxious in there, but after a while, you're like, okay, this is how it should be. And it was just kind of like that on steroids. But for me, it was the day 7 because there was little time left. But I realized in hindsight, those were the most important days for me because they were the hardest.
So, day 7, day 8, your time is standing still.
So slow.
What are what are you telling yourself, or what are the thoughts that you're trying to keep from convincing yourself?
Well, the thoughts were, I'm thinking, God, because I get about 80 emails a day. I'm thinking, how many emails have I got? Even though I've got an autoresponder on there, what's waiting for me out there? Because I've got several businesses, I've got clients, even though they know what's happening for the most part, it doesn't stop a lot of those emails coming in. So you get anxious over that. That's why it's hard to go on holiday sometime, because you're like, okay, I'm here relaxing, but I know my inbox is just going nuts now. So those are the hardest parts for me. And obviously, I was missing my wife. I was just missing communication, interaction. Even though I'm not really a social person, I just felt like I needed some sort of engagement. But, I'd say those last couple of days, it made me realize, okay, there's changes in my life that I've learned from here that I know that are going to make me better. So then it was more positive and kind of riding it out.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really glad I did. Speaking to a lot of people on the last day, because now we could talk to the people that we've kind of seen, because you can't make eye contact, but obviously you observe and you see people. Now we're communicating with each other and realizing that we all had different struggles, but all very similar in the same. And that's being a human on this earth in this day and age. Very, very different to, as you know, what it was 30 years ago. Yeah. So, those are a lot of things that we're dealing with. We have this sensory overload, and, the phone is like cocaine. It's like alcohol. If you want to get cocaine or alcohol, at least you have to go out and get it. It's here. You've got your socials, you've got your emails, you've got your Amazon, you've got your streaming. It's all here. And it's just creating this sensory overload with dopamine that is allowing, draining that dopamine level, where we're just becoming depressed and becoming addicted. And it's just not good for our human engagement with other people or ourselves.
Yeah, I wonder what it's going to be like, in 20 or 30 years. When you have kids that grew up on their phones, or even in 10 years, you'll have kids that grew up, they know nothing but cell phone. And, it seems like the more connected that we've gotten with cell phones and those type of things, the more disconnected we've gotten with society, because it's really, it's not real. It's not real human connection. It's an addiction. Actually, there's a saying that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is human connection. And so
I like that.
I think that we're getting more disconnected with the phones. I mean, what do you suggest to people?
Use it, and don't allow it to use you, because like we wouldn't have connected hadn't it been for being online. I would not gone to CPI hadn't it been not for me doing my research and being online. There's a lot that we can take advantage of. I live in a different country to my parents, so I use Zoom, I use FaceTime all the time.
Right.
But I use it and don't allow it to use me. And I think that's where the issues are. I have the screen time app on my phone, so I get that log every day. So that makes me a little bit conscious. Wow, I don't want that to be too long, even though I know a lot of it is on email, but I just don't want it to be on mindless, basically reality TV, because that's what social platforms are.
Yeah, especially like the Instagrams and the TikToks. I don't have a TikTok, but
I've got a TikTok, but I don't have the app. My wife made it for me.
Yes. Smart. I think we actually, Warren, it's not my wife, but he made my TikTok. I don't
you got one too? Yeah.
I forgot I have one.
It's funny. Have you checked his DMs? Wondering what sort of weird DMs he's got.
Yeah, Warren, do you check the DMs?
I don't think we get a lot of DMs on that.
Oh, okay. Well,
that's good. My wife gets some weird DMs apparently from my friends mostly. They don't know it's not me.
Right. That's pretty funny actually. Yeah, I would have to tell my friends to be really careful. That's a little much. You were just talking about, going through, you're with your dad for about a month and kind of realizing what's super important. I'm sure, because you're an introspective guy. You're doing meditation retreats. You're always looking to better yourself. You have to do a lot of self-reflection in that. As you're going through that process with your dad, and you saw how close I am with my parents too. What were your biggest kind of takeaways or learnings from that?
Good question. I'd say, that time is obviously very, very valuable. It, without being morbid, it kind of does set you up for the inevitable, and that's what I thought, okay, I need to be prepared for this because this time's coming eventually. And one of us has to be kind of strong to ensure that, everyone sticks together, everybody's fine, no one else is kind of worrying about the inevitable. And, I guess I just took a responsibility. It's the first time I probably felt like a big brother or, like I don't know, more of a parent within that situation more than anything. But not at any point, as weird as it sounds, did I feel, even though, the doctors and nurses came to me a couple of times and said, this isn't looking good. I never felt that he wouldn't pull through. I don't know. There's always positivity in that. And I think you have to be positive. And, because my father's always been a very, very tough guy, very tough character. And, even the doctors said, this guy's tough because the numbers that were showing up wasn't being dictated to the symptoms that he was showing.
Sure.
But of course, anything can happen. They really did take care of him. I know that we look at the mainstream hospital system or sick care system. They really did take care of him. So he was in relatively good hands there, but it was touch and go. And I'd say I gained more strength from it, knowing that, there's little complaints that we have on a daily basis, the Wi-Fi's too slow or whatever it may be. They're minuscule compared to what is really important in our lives. And I guess that gave me a good perspective, but understand your symptoms as well. Because a lot of us, and my father was guilty of this because it happened the first time, as I told you yesterday, when we were in India. I've got a gym franchise in India, and we were doing a tour of some of the gyms there. And my parents came, and my dad started pissing blood, and he didn't tell anyone, didn't recognize the symptoms. Then all of a sudden found out that he had cancer of the kidney. Same thing happened this time when he got sepsis. He's walking around, and Mum said, "God, you caught the sun." It was his liver packing up, basically. And he went to the hospital the next day because he felt a little bit ill. And they said, "Oh, you should probably go to Aberystwyth, this nearest city, to go to the ICU." And he's like, "Okay," and just went home. And thought, I'll sleep it off and feel better tomorrow. And obviously he wasn't. So, one of the things I do recognize from that time is just be vulnerable when you need to be. Because I've fallen for that as well.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's okay. It's broken. It's torn. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Just you need to be a little bit more vulnerable. It isn't all about being a tough guy. Don't allow your ego to get in the way.
Yeah. The Brene Brown, I don't know if you've ever seen her TED Talk on the power of vulnerability.
Oh, no, I haven't.
She wrote a book on that too, I believe. But yeah, she wrote a book on that too. But she talks about that, like the good things that we happen that we have happen in our life many times, come from our vulnerability. So if I share something with you that's personal, and you don't take advantage of that, we build trust. And, the vulnerability allows us to get a better relationship. The more that we're able to share in a trusting relationship, the closer that we get as human beings. And, I think that, as society has gotten softer, I also think that it's been good in that sense that we are sharing more. Now, we can't let the vulnerability make us victims to our circumstances, but we can be vulnerable and still be responsible.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That makes complete sense, because when you were saying as society gets a little bit softer, I was like, yeah, that could go the other way.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people could be coming across as hypochondriacs. This is a problem, that's a problem. It's like, good God, it really isn't.
Right.
But there's obviously a problem here.
Yes.
And they've convinced themselves that this little minuscule issue is a lot bigger than what it is. So how do you deal with that? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think vulnerability with a victim mentality brings more pain.
For sure.
Vulnerability with a responsibility mentality, I think brings really good things and brings freedom, really.
Yeah.
So I try to be vulnerable with people, like the idea that, I might say something, you might learn something about me that you could use against me, but I'd still rather share, in a reasonable way, not just crazy stuff, but in a reasonable way, because it's real, and it's life that we're experiencing together. And I know that I'm only as good as all the relationships that I have around me. You know, really, it's like if I've got to have good relationships, because if I don't, you know, I feel like my relationships are what keep me going in many ways. My faith, my relationships, you know, knowing that I'm doing my best to treat people well. But hey, if I've, you know, here are my struggles, can we lift each other up together?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I get that. Like, did you feel that, because I know that you lived in LA for a little while and I lived in LA. Did you find that, you know, because you want to help people, lift people up, did people take advantage of that at all in LA? You know, I'm not just singling out LA, but some people, you know, there's some, you know, flaky individuals in certain places that want to jump on your train because it's going faster than this train.
Yes.
And they can kind of take advantage of that vulnerability.
Yes, absolutely. Not just LA. I mean, just in life. I've definitely been, had times where I was taken advantage of. But I think that the benefit of being vulnerable overall, I know that's a risk sometimes, you know, when I share or become close. And the more successful you get, the more you have to really watch it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people might not have the best intentions for you. But I also know that like my strength is the relationships that I've developed over my life. And so I'd rather have that and be reasonable about it, not be stupid about it, but I'd rather have that and take that chance. That's what that TED Talk was about. You know, the power of vulnerability. You know, you can get a lot of power for it. I feel like in many ways that's where, for me, my power, you know, that's one of the places my power comes from.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I totally get that. Because for many years, I was living in India and I got mold toxicity. I didn't know anything about it at the time. And, you know, one of the first or the major symptom that I got was just lack of sleep. I was literally sleeping about 3 hours a night. And I would compare that 3 hours a night sleep to like getting on a 12-hour flight where, you know, I'd wake up every 20 minutes thinking it's time to get up. It was uncomfortable. It was horrible. And man, I was an asshole to be around because of that. You know, I was very aggressive, and you know, because I chose not to recognize the symptoms, or chose not to recognize that I should be vulnerable in this situation and seek help. I just used that to my advantage. I was like, I'm still going to outwork you. I'm going to out-train you. You know, and I'm just going to be this hardened, armored individual. And you know. It was great because it fueled my workouts. I was just aggressive. I didn't make eye contact with anybody. And that was the only time that I kind of was able to release and feel a little bit better and cope with myself. But it wasn't until I actually recognized that, okay, I need to be vulnerable now.
Yeah.
Because I can only keep this up for so long, and I'm burning a candle at both ends, and I'm burning relationships in the process. And when I did so, I eventually found help with this guy called Dr. Spanag. He's in a clinic in Oldsmar, Florida. And I was going through this detoxification process after I had brain scan, stool samples, urine samples, saliva samples, blood tests, like 62 blood tests on the first day, that we realized that I had this mold toxicity. He described the symptoms to a T, like he knew me. And when I was going through this detoxification process, I'd see some people after going through the detox with the IVs, ALA, glutathione, etc. A lot of these people were passed out. And I was like, what's wrong with these people? I'm going to go to the gym now. I'm going to work out. And the doctor said, a lot of these people actually aren't as sick as you, but you've created this resilience and this denial in your brain that you choose not to be vulnerable. And it was at that point I was like, wow, okay, whatever I think is hardening me is actually killing me. So I need to be aware of that and express that vulnerability. Still have a hard time with it.
Yeah.
But,
Well, because, you know, I guess guys with a lot of testosterone and, you know, some would say alphas.
Yeah. And the upbringing as well, because if you've been kind of, you know, if your parents or people around you don't really show any weakness within themselves, I think that, you know, as a kid through observation, you take that upon yourself too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yes, it's hard sometimes. I mean, it really is to, you know, completely be vulnerable, because we don't want to sound like we're complaining either.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
That's what it is. And there is a difference. There's a difference between being vulnerable and complaining, and kind of figuring that out and being vulnerable in the right situations, to me, ultimately helps my life and helps other people's life, because if people feel like they can come to you for legitimate things too, I get power from that too, because I like helping people.
Yeah.
You got a real problem. Okay, let me talk you through it. What's going on here? Well, what are some different possibilities? And so, we get something from that too. I mean, I feel like, what makes me happiest is helping people. I love it. Like, I would rather be helping people. I'm not going to say I wouldn't want to make a living, but like being able to make a living and helping people, that's like a dream come true. There's nothing better. But there is a balance with everything. And I think the mindset of being personally responsible, that I'm responsible for everything in my life. If you come, at least you have that foundation, then you can, I'm going to say play, but you can work on these other things that might get you in a little trouble, but you're not going to blame it on other things. And you realize ultimately it was my decision, because that's power. People have something happen, horrible things happen to children, 5, 8, 10 years old. And I'm not judging them by saying this, but 25 years old, you've got to get over that. You've got to say, look, this happened to me and it's awful, but are you going to let that situation dictate how you live your entire life?
Yeah.
At some point, it's a choice. We don't like to say that, say, oh, that's insensitive. I'm not trying to be insensitive. I'm trying to get people to realize they don't have to live with that PTSD.
Yeah.
They can overcome it if they choose to be responsible for how they live, from this day forward.
Yeah, I see that. I've been a witness to it. I've never encountered that myself. I had a great upbringing, but I see that so many times where people will blame something, or maybe it's their conscious of what happened, of what happened years and years and years ago. Maybe they've turned it into something that is now their reality, but they blame that for the actions or their thoughts and the way that they treat people now.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. That's a weak way out. But it's a justification that they've chosen, and they run with it. And
Absolutely.
it's just now they're not dictating their own life. They're being dictated by their past.
Yeah, you wonder too, like, I think about this sometimes, like, is the story that I'm telling myself about what happened 20, 30, 40 years ago, is it even real? Because sometimes we can make up stories that this is why, I'm this way, or this happened this way, so this led to that. And then I'll look back, I'm like, what I was taught as a kid wasn't even true. I've been living a lie my whole life, Yeah. We live in these, a lot of times, and I still look at it a lot. Like, is this even real? Is what I'm believing, or did I just make some of the pieces up to have a little confirmation bias as to why things are now the way they are?
Maybe. I don't really ask myself that question, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm too stuck in my ways. I'm thinking, nope, that's it, and that's how it is. I definitely have taken on a lot of my father's traits. I know that, but I think it's to my best advantage. And my wife may argue. I don't know. But, there's certain rules and regulations that I know that I've taken from my childhood, but I don't think it does anybody any harm, and I don't think I've made up any of it. But you could be right, because I've actually read a book on that, where a lot of the stories that we think back to, or the memories that we think back to, is something that has now been morphed based on time and our thoughts and our beliefs.
Yeah.
Whether there's any true to that, I don't know. I guess we'd have to interview all my past relationships, friends, and family.
What do they say? Yeah. I definitely don't want to interview all my past relationships. That might be a little rough. No. So, one of the interesting things, about your career, as I was, reading more about it, it's a big entrepreneurial background, but, and it seems to be in, partly into, personal training, but bodybuilding, but also you have this super health side, the biohacking side, all of the different modalities that you work with and put together, kind of always on the search for how to be as healthy as possible. At what point, or maybe it was from the beginning, did you, take the fitness aspect, but take it to an even another level? Because most bodybuilders don't do all the other things that you're doing, right? What really brought all that together?
It was definitely the mold toxicity. After, going through that detoxification protocol, like Dr. Spanag would have had me at his clinic for 6 months to detox as much as I needed to. So I needed to research a lot and continue that at home. And now I'm starting to look into coffees because there's a lot of mycotoxins, as you know, in coffee and in wines and in dark chocolate. I'm like, where else does it lie? So now I start looking into glyphosate and antibiotics that are in our food because as an athlete, as you'll know, we double the amount as the general population. So we're potentially harming ourselves twice the amount as the general population because we're eating twice the amount. So that's when I really started going down the rabbit hole of looking into organics. And obviously I wanted to set my circadian rhythm and reset it. So then I started looking into, sunlight and earthing and grounding and EMFs that are surrounding us and, our environmental factors that are potentially holding us back.
Yeah.
So that's when I started really going down the quote unquote biohacking rabbit hole and looking at ways of then quantification, looking at my blood sugar levels. We're in a 24-hour blood glucose monitor and then tracking my sleep and started focusing on my biological age. So doing various tests like the Horvath test, which is like a methylation test. And then you have like glycan age, measuring your glycans and your telomeres and seeing what I am now putting into practice to see if it's actually working. Of course, you take it all with a pinch of salt, seeing if I'm feeling better, looking at my blood markers, doing DNA tests. And over time, having these tests done every year, I thought, okay, I'm definitely on the right track. I'm reversing my biological age. My biological was 2 years older than my chronological, which wasn't bad. I was pretty happy with that. But then I've been able to reverse it every single year. And a lot of it probably is contributing from stem cells, of course, is things that I'm doing outside of the box. But I think a big portion of it comes from sleep, making sure that you're getting, obviously our NAD levels decline with age, our glutathione levels decline with age. So making sure all those things are topped up because, I'm 50 now in 2 weeks' time. Oh, wow. So I want to continue to do whatever I can to reverse that biological age and feel good and open that ceiling of looking younger and feeling younger as I chronologically get older. So that has become a little bit more of my passion, but I know that strength, such as grip strength, squat strength, is associated with longevity and making sure that we don't have brittle bones. They've studied the people in Okinawa who a lot of them don't have seats. So these elderly people, these centenarians, are sitting and standing from the floor about 50 times a day. That's their resistance training. They don't lose their balance and break a hip.
Yep.
It just doesn't happen in that population. And you have people in Sardinia that don't have a word in their language for retirement. So they keep moving. And these people, again, a lot of these villages live on very steep hills as well. They're constantly being active. And that is fascinating me now. So that actually, I have a passion for that more than bodybuilding. Bodybuilding will always have my pivotal foot in that gym because I love it. It makes me feel good. It's therapeutic. It's not so much for vanity purposes now because I gave up competing in 2009. But I just absolutely love it. And I'm a better person to be around for it. But I like venturing into other things. As we spoke yesterday, we do Ironman triathlon, or we've done ultramarathon, or something that is a little bit more functional as well. And, that aspect will always be within me as well. But now I speak at a lot of events. I'm speaking at a few in the US here this year, Dubai and whatnot, where I'm talking about how athletes can still perform at their best, or average individuals, but not allow themselves to increase their biological age in the process, how to reverse it. And a lot of it comes down to your basics that a lot of people don't want to engage in because they want to pay for those biohacks, because today's technology is out there and you go to a lot of these biohacking events and are like, I want that NAD supplement. I want those blue light blocking glasses, the PEMF, the earthing mat. Are you working out? Are you following a good diet? No.
Right.
It's the fundamentals in place first, and But, as you know, in any industry, a lot of people want to buy their way
Sure.
out or into longevity and have that justification not to put in the hard work. But the hard work has to come in first.
Yeah.
But managing the stress, like we have so much stress in our lives today.
Absolutely.
Making sure that, have that cold thermogenesis to, providing that your cortisol levels aren't too high, just to regulate that vagal nerve that needs stimulating to give us more mental stability throughout the day. So a lot of these practices I do put in, but I fell into the trap a couple of years ago of getting anxious about getting everything in before I'd work out first thing in the morning. I got to get the red light, got to get an ice bath, get in a sauna, do the meditation, put on a brain tap. And I found myself getting really stressed because I couldn't put in all these modalities. So now I just take it at ease and do it whenever I can.
Yeah, I mean, that is interesting because ultimately these things are meant to lower your chronological age, make you live healthier, make you live longer. But if what we're doing is actually adding stress, because you're already doing more than 99.9% of the people out there, it's really just picking the things that can fit into your lifestyle while being, as healthy as possible. Still getting your exercise in and those type of things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I absolutely love it. People will say, God, that's a lot. That takes an obsession. Well, I prefer to have that obsession over something that makes me feel good and that keeps me calm over, an obsession of, I don't know, pornography or chasing women in a pub.
Yeah.
That makes me feel good and it lowers my cortisol levels, but I take it as it comes. The only thing that I'd say that I'm doing that is accelerating my biological age is the amount of flights that I'm taking. So, we've traveled 9 months of the year this year. Next year, I've only agreed to 3 events in April. One's in Texas, Health Optimization Summit, a retreat in Corfu and Tulum. And that is it.
Let's go. So you get 3 things next year?
At the moment,
Okay,
yeah. And
that's
I'm just going to focus on the absolute essentials, not that, you have the opportunity to go talk at this event. Oh yeah, I'll do it. I'm not going to do that anymore. If it means promoting the company at vitamin shops, okay,
Sure.
I'll do that.
Yeah. The travel's brutal.
Unbelievable.
My schedule through the end of the year, every week is already booked. Whether I'm going to be in Nashville for these 4 days for podcast, or Mexico, or Vegas for the UFC, or Germany for some medical conference, or Thailand and Singapore for Laura's birthday, or, it's every single week is booked. And, dealing with, the airports and the flights, especially on international flights, you're just grinding it out. I do wonder how much that actually affects the quality of our health.
For sure. Going from time zones and then, being on a plane, being loaded with Wi-Fi and EMFs and then having to go through the x-rays and, being in a, pressurized cabin with circulated air, it's not good. It's not good. I do whatever I can to mitigate. I'll fast to the, if it's nighttime at the destination I'm traveling to, I'll fast during that time. I'll wear the blue light blocking glasses knowing that it's nighttime at my destination. I'll wear earthing shoes so I'm grounding myself the second that I go down to absorb those negative ions of that new time zone. So I never get jet lag, but still, that's only keeping the head afloat. There is still a lot of oxidative stress that is going on. So I go high on the antioxidants and hydration, and I'll always get an aisle seat to go to the toilet and do 50 toilet squats or whatever. So there's movement.
Yeah.
But it's not the perfect scenario by any means.
So one of the things that you know a lot about that I don't know much about at all is EMFs. And I've heard you talk about it. What kind of got you interested in the effects of EMFs, and what do you do to prevent it?
Okay, so we were actually talking about this just now. We were in Vegas a while back, I don't know, 2016, 17. And we went to a music festival that was in a speedway. We were there for 3 days. And every day, what are we doing? We're going from the speed, and there was no phone connection because there was so many people contained in a very small area, everybody trying to get on their phones at the same time. No one's phones were working. And then what do? We go to Vegas to get penetrated with more EMFs. So when we left, I felt shit for days, felt really bad. And it was quite a large group of us. And about I'd say a third of them felt the same. I'm like, what's going on? Why do we feel so bad? And that's when I started looking into the EMFs. I was like, well, no one's phone was working. And I noticed that when I go to very populated places like Mumbai or whatever, I never sleep well in the hotels. And I was wondering why that was. And then we had, and I spoke to you about Brian Hoyer from Shielded Healing. He came to the house once and he started talking about, he went through our house looking at the dirty electricity where the EMF was the highest in our bedroom, and started talking about, the negative effects in certain individuals with non-native EMFs, not EMFs that you get from the sun or anything like that, but non-native, from our phone. And so that's when I started looking into it a little bit deeper and started, the phone case that I've got is protected. The fanny pack that I wear is a Defender Shield fanny pack, to ensure that it mitigates a lot of the EMF. And when I started combining both the blocking of the EMF, even the boxer shorts that I wear has like Faraday, so it protects your balls, your testosterone.
I need some of that.
And when I started doing that and combining it with earthing, grounding, that's when I found like my HRV started to go back up, my heart rate variability, my sleep started to improve. I felt better that I wasn't getting so much of the brain fog, because I found myself kind of, I was doing some talks and I found myself like umming and ahhing, and I'm like, I don't do that. Where's this clarity gone? And I found that clarity started to come back. Now, I was mentioning earlier that not everybody is electrosensitive. My wife isn't, but certain individuals are, like some people can eat peanuts, some people can't. So I just need to be aware of those sensitivities. So ever since I've started blocking that or mitigating that or harmonizing it, depolarizing it with all these gadgets that I travel with, I felt a lot better, and I'm able to quantify it by my scores, by my sleep scores and my HRV. And, that can't be placebo. I'm sleeping,
right.
So that's why I thought, okay, this seems to be working for me. A lot of people think I'm wearing a tinfoil hat and I'm a bit woo-woo. But if it works for me, then I'm going to continue to do it no matter how much ridicule that I get.
Absolutely. You talk about grounding and earthing. Tell people what that is.
Yeah. So, taking your shoes and socks off, walking in nature on the grass, on the beach, or, like I kind of biohack my way a lot of the time due to travel, because if I'm flying somewhere, I'm not going to find a grassy patch at 12 o'clock at night if I've just landed and earthed myself. So I wear these shoes. I'm not sponsored by any of these companies I'm talking about, but I have these shoes called Bahi. I was wearing them yesterday when I showed up. So as soon as I land, I'm able to ground and earth myself, because like if you hold an EMF reader, and I've tried this, and you have your phone in the other hand, then the EMF goes all the way up, know. But now if I take my shoes and socks off, it goes down, because now the EMFs aren't penetrating into me, they're penetrating through me. So it's the same if I'm wearing the shoes. Is it as good as taking your shoes and socks off? No, of course, but it's the next best thing.
Yeah.
So I always do that, knowing that I'm going to be penetrated a lot when I'm traveling. And when I was in India earlier this year, my sleep started to go down the wrong pathway again. But I was earthing myself every morning. I was going for a walk on the beach and, doing whatever I could to mitigate a lot of the EMF and the Wi-Fi with all the gadgets that I have. And I even have the blanket in my hotel room that is made of Faraday. And my friend, Tim Gray, said, try earthing in the evening as well before you go to bed. So I was like, okay, gave that a shot. And then it worked.
Oh, wow.
So grounding in the morning and in the night, because I was obviously getting penetrated with a lot of EMF being in Mumbai during the day, that was having a negative effect on my HRV and sleep. So that's when I've like, okay, I'm convinced this is working.
Yeah. How long do you earth for?
15, 20 minutes.
15 to 20
so
minutes.
I generally go for a walk in the morning, walk in the evening. That's what I do. Or if I, a lot of the time I just wear the trainers all the time. There's a great book called Earthing by Clint Ober, and you can go on Vimeo or YouTube and watch Earthing the movie, and you can actually see a lot of studies there showing a lot of inflammatory markers being decreased through earthing.
So when you wake up in the morning, like what is the routine? Is it, do you go earth? Do you have a supplement routine? Do you have, I'm sure you do, like what is the routine to stay healthy?
Okay, so I usually take I wake up and then, the first thing I do is usually take, I'll have a glass of water. In there, I'll have lemon juice, I'll have methylene blue, and I'll also have hydrogen-rich tablets. I'll throw a couple of those in there and knock that back. And then I'll usually have like some NAD. So there's a product called NAD Regen that also has spermidine and resveratrol in it as well. Some the liposomal vitamin C is in with the glutathione. So I'll usually have that first thing in the morning, along with a liver tonic called Deliverance. And, just to help with my liver on an empty stomach, I usually do that first thing in the morning. And then I'll generally, not always in this order and not all of these things, but generally I'll do the sauna, the ice bath, and then cardio, or cardio and then sauna and then ice bath. I always finish with the cold. And then, dependent on when my workout is, I'll usually work out later in the morning, or I'll work out first thing in the morning and do all those things after. Okay. And I usually finish with the red light if I don't go and get the red frequencies from the sun itself. Mm-hmm. And earthing is in there somewhere. Either going out on the grass in the summer, in Idaho winters, no, I'm wearing the shoes. And I have earthing mats in the house as well. I've got an earthing sheet on the bed.
Yeah, so how long have you been doing this or a similar protocol?
Probably since about 2015, 16.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a long time. That's before biohacking was really a thing, right?
No, it was becoming a little bit more popular. Dave Asprey was making it popular at that time. There wasn't so many events, but Dave Asprey's events just had its 10th anniversary now, the annual I spoke there, and that's his 10th year going. So he definitely made it popular with his bulletproof coffees and stuff like that, and it kind of grew from there, and it's been growing a little bit ever since. Myself and Ben Greenfield just done a second tour of seminars in India, and from the first time to the second time, because the first time we did it just before COVID, second time was this year, and the amount of people that are actually showing up to these events are obviously grown a lot. There's definitely a lot more interest in just the vanity aspect, as the health and longevity sector is really, really growing. You only have to go to like these Whole Foods and, local co-ops to see the supplement section growing in there, to see that it is gaining more popularity.
You started a new supplement company.
Yes.
Recently. What's the idea behind that?
So it's called Unmatched. So we've been working on this for quite a while. The one thing that disturbs me, and I'm not shitting on a lot of brands, all the brands, because there's some really good brands out there that I do like and I do advise and suggest to people. But a lot of the brands, we are part of the health and fitness industry. But a lot of these supplements aren't healthy. So how's that part of the health and fitness industry?
Right.
Like you're eating a certain way, you're sleeping, you're hydrating, trying to avoid a lot of the bad food that's in our supply chain. But then you take supplements that's just full of crap.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really wanted to eradicate from the supplement industry was artificial sweetener. Okay, artificial colors, flavors, of course, we don't have that, but I don't have as much of a problem for that as I do the artificial sweeteners, because it's in everything now. It's in bars, it's in the energy drinks, it's in the Diet Cokes, the sodas, it's in the food supply, and it's in the supplement supply. So we're overwhelming our system. If people want to have some artificial sweeteners every now and again, go for it. Your gut microbiome has the opportunist flora to help cannot balance that. We're an amazing species. But when it gets this overwhelm, now you could get possibly leaky gut, dysbiosis, and, it can lead to cravings as well for more sweet. So I just wanted to eradicate that. So that was the biggest part of this formulation, or took the longest time, I should say. The formulation of ingredients, we did that relatively quick. There's a lot of ingredients that are not being used here in the US that we're using. Some are very rare as well. Like we don't have caffeine in any of our products. We have what's called paraxanthine, which gives you a euphoric effect, but doesn't have any of the negative downsides of caffeine, like anxiety, higher cortisol levels, diuretic effect, or anything like that. None of the downstream effects, can make some people more anxious. So this gives you a more euphoric feeling. And then we have a form of creatine, for instance, called cregatine, which is creatine monohydrate combined with guanidinoacidic acid, which is GAA. A lot of people refer to it as GAA. So that helps cross the blood-brain barrier much more efficiently to be more neuroprotective. So it more so has a health aspect to this as opposed to just performance. You'll get great performance, but I really wanted this to be healthy. That, of course, I can't advise this to minors, but if I was to say to my little nieces, you can take this, I'm not going to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
So that's what I really wanted to put out there. Again, I look at food as going to heal me or harm me, and I think we should look at supplements the exact same way.
Yeah, Scotty took your pre-workout. I'm going to go take some here after this podcast.
Yeah, I was
I'm
giving Scotty some shit because I was like, dude, do not buy it. I'm going to send you some subs.
no,
But he's like, no, I'm buying it.
Yeah,
I was like, I'll just send it to
I
Ed.
feel the same way. We want to support you. But he was saying, man, he's like, I've never felt a pre-workout like that. You know, he was singing its praises. Is there something like what's in the pre-workout that made him say that?
Well, there's a lot of things. So we have like a lot of products that help with cognitive function, more nootropics like cytocholine, acetyl-L-carnitine, but the paraxanthine is a big aspect to it. The paraxanthine, like it's phenomenal because, you know, the more you take, for instance, caffeine, the more you have to take because your tolerance increases. People are reporting, and Sean, who formulated and isolated this ingredient, said the same thing before we were getting all the reviews back, saying the more that I take it over time, the better the effects.
Wow.
So I think that's what people are experiencing. And then you have people like me, you know, so the BH2K, that is the one with paraxanthine.
Okay.
And then we have another pre-workout called Dissident, which is a non-stim. So paraxanthine is still classed as a stimulant, but you could literally take it before bed and you're not going to have any issues sleeping.
Huh.
Like, for instance, this drink, I'm not sponsored by these guys, but there's paraxanthine in that. I had 2 of those before bed at a biohacking conference recently. I slept like a baby, you know. So it doesn't have any of those negative effects, but you can actually, there's a few people that do it. I do it, but I stack both of those supplements together because the ingredient profiles are completely different.
Which supplements do you stack?
The Dissident, pre-workout, non-stim, and the BH2K. Because now it's shown in studies as well that there's an ingredient called, for instance, PKTP, that is in Dissident, that works in synergy, it's been shown in studies now, with paraxanthine. So stacking these together can give you an even bigger effect, but it's not essential by any means. Some of us hardcore do it.
Yeah, I'll have to try it, actually.
If you're man enough, you'll give it a shot.
Okay. Did you send me the BH2K?
I think so. I don't know. I'll have to go and have a look. If I haven't, then I'll send it to you. And then we have obviously hydration formula, but and we have longevity EAAs. So those are your essential amino acids. But then we have spermidine and glutathione in it as well. So we have these longevity benefits added to these products as well. And then the ElectroShred is a hydration product, but we also have ingredients in it that help regulate your blood sugar levels.
Oh, nice.
Because a lot of my community have cravings and, you know, they have, you know, pre-diabetic or whatever. So we wanted to have blood sugar regulating ingredients.
Really, it sounds like you have a supplement company that has products that are great for working out, but also have, let's call it, some biohacking benefits.
For sure. 100%.
That's the brand.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, like for instance, with the whey protein, we wanted to go grass-fed and make, of course, naturally sweeten and add digestive enzymes to break down those protein fractions and peptides into smaller fractions for easier digestion and make sure there's no lactose in there to, you know, because there's some people that have that intolerance.
And talk about gut health, because, you know, a lot of our immune system's in our gut.
I hormones.
Studies showing that, this is in mice, but the mice that were eating their own poop, basically, they had the same, or other mice's poop had the same immunological response or better than taking a PD-1 checkpoint inhibitor for the mice with cancer.
Interesting.
Yes.
Wow, I hadn't heard about that study. But we hear about these. Have you heard about these fecal transplants?
Oh, absolutely.
That they're doing? Yeah, of course. You know, that is helping people with their performance, their gut microbiome, etc. But yeah, it's everything comes from your gut, like your hormones. You know, I believe don't quote me on this, but I believe that there's mental disorders that could possibly be eradicated by taking care of the health, because this inflammatory reaction over time could be like a little rut, a little pathway to the brain, and then that turns into a lane and then a freeway, of these inflammatory markers, because I see it all the time. And I'm not saying I'm not a doctor or a physician, but I see it all the time through my own observational studies when people really fix their gut microbiome and start, eating maybe the rainbow, more probiotic and prebiotic fiber, and, eradicating, maybe they took, a lot of antibiotics in the past, or, maybe they had an alcohol problem and they've caused issues with their gut, and they eradicate this. All of a sudden, mentally, they feel so much better. They feel more stabilized. But I do have a shotgun approach where I'm having them do cold thermogenesis, either cold showers and ice baths, which will help tone that vagal nerve to create more mental stability as well. But I believe a lot of it comes from the gut health.
Yeah.
You are what you eat. Some doctors say it's a second brain. Others doctors say it's the first brain. And a good friend of mine who's just arrived in the US today from Germany, Dr. Dom, who's a biodentist, he's got a book called Health Starts in Your Mouth, where he talks about the microbiome in your mouth having a positive effect on the gut, and then the gut leading to the brain health,
Yeah, it'd be interesting to talk to that guy because, there's one theory in cancer that, it can be caused by dental problems.
For sure.
And I've seen some thermograms where someone has an infection in their mouth, and you can see it on this thermogram, and it goes from, let's say, the tooth here, and you can see the blood flow draining directly to the breast cancer.
Yeah.
And, it's obvious somehow that it's feeding this tumor.
Yeah, 100%. Like we know of stories of, somebody in Boise, they thought this person had a stroke, young, healthy guy, and it wasn't as an infection in his tooth. And it was something what the dentist did that created this infection.
Yep.
And that's why, we were just in Germany to see Dom, who's a world-leading biodentist, to get all of our dental work done and undo a lot of the damage that conventional dentists had done to us over the years, getting rid of a lot of the root canals, putting in ceramics now and ceramic implants. I had a gold tooth there, which looked cool, but now that's come out because I was acting like an antenna all the time, And the one thing that I noticed straight away, because I didn't know much about it, but Dom's a really good friend and I've watched him speak a few times and he's very, very convincing. But until you've actually gone through it yourself, you don't know. Like I know that he works on a lot of celebs and professional athletes where professional football players got a knee issue, tried everything, and then it was correlated to a molar or some sort of root canal issue, and then fixed that, and all of a sudden his knee was okay because he had gone through absolutely everything else or exhausted all possibilities. And for me, even though I've got the discipline to say no to a lot of cravings, I was having so many cravings and I didn't know why. And when I had this a lot of dental intervention from Dom, after a few weeks, I realized I had no cravings.
Wow. And
my wife was having gut issues, very bloated all the time. And she said that her bloat had gone. It's so bizarre, dude.
Yeah.
You have no idea until you've actually experienced it yourself. And you wonder how many other people experience some sort of dysregulation, maybe in their gut, or like you said, a cancer that's being fed, and we don't know. It's like, I'm changing subjects right now, but when my father had come out of a couple of surgeries he had because of the sepsis, they had to go into his liver, drain an abscess in the liver. Then he had internal bleeding, so they patched him back up, and they had to go back in there again and take the patch off. Because he was on so many drugs and morphine and whatnot, he started going through crazy delirium. I've never been with anybody who's gone through going through delirium at the time, and it was the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
So bizarre. He's talking about where's the hay bales? Why are we in this field? And he'd jump every now and again. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And the one day I went in and he was in a chair now. He's out of the bed, he's in a chair, they're moving him around. I'm like, can't we just get him facing a window? Because we're in this place called Aberystwyth. Beautiful view, the ocean's right there, but he's facing inwards still, out of his mind. And apparently the next morning, he starts getting pretty nasty. And he's like, you're holding me here against my will, to the nurses. call my son. He's going to get me out of here, whatever. And they said, okay. And they tried calling me. I wasn't answering. And they just said, let's just put you by the window and I'll call him again. They put him by the window. And when we came in, he's completely back to normal. 100%. Like it happened that quick.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that because there's so many things that are in our environment that we have no idea that could possibly heal us.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we're arming and ahhing and thinking it's normal, or we're dealing with some sort of discomfort and like, oh, it's old age.
Yeah.
When it necessarily isn't, because we do have the technology or the open-mindedness today to experiment with these things and see what works and what doesn't. And it makes me think, how many people are in these hospitals that don't have that window or not have the understanding that could possibly heal?
When you think about with COVID, everybody was in a hospital. They couldn't see their loved ones. You know, they're stuck in this room, afraid. The fear of COVID too. You know, cortisol levels raise up.
No vitamin D.
No vitamin D. And, you know, I know COVID was a thing. My best friend died at 42 years old of COVID.
Sorry to hear.
Yeah, very. You know, he was overweight, high risk, but you know, don't deny it was a real thing, of course. But I do wonder if how we treated those patients increased the amount of people dying, and I would be willing to bet that it absolutely did. You know, leaving people alone in a room, no loved ones. You know, no. Oh, you're gonna talk to your family on an iPad. Oh, they're getting ready to put a tube in you. You're about to go, you know, go to the ICU, put you on a ventilator. Bye, I love you. You know, it's like no connection.
Yeah.
And, you know, they wondered why they were getting these responses. And I think it, you know, had something to do with it.
For sure. Like if you're in a hospital situation, you feel alone as it is.
Yes.
You know, yeah, have your visiting hours, but you feel alone. And you can tell that, you can sense that when you're in there. You want to give more of yourself to strangers. So I could only imagine how debilitating that would have been for these individuals, you know, where it's just so easy for them to give up. Of course, you know, they don't always have a say in the matter, but I'm sure that was a major, major contributor. You know, I could only imagine what those people, you know, rest in peace, were going through at that time of being completely alone.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know, because I know a lot of the hospitals are understaffed, so I'm sure a lot of them were ignored as well.
Yeah, well, you know, I think that the personnel did the best they could.
Yeah, of course.
You know, they were following this specific set of rules.
sure.
But a couple months before COVID happened, I was doing a podcast, and someone asked me, they asked me a question, something about my biggest fears. I said, well, honestly, I've been with so many people as they're dying, you know, through the hospital, through cancer, and I've seen people that have been abandoned by their families. So they had caused or had so much friction in their relationships that nobody wanted to be with them.
Wow.
And or they just didn't want any of them around. And but you know, so in those last moments, we always try to create an environment, you know, that's loving and that lets them feel loved and comfortable. And so, but I said in that interview, my biggest fear was dying in a hospital alone, where none of my loved ones were around me.
Yeah.
And you know, then you saw what happened with COVID, and it was like that nightmare situation was, you know, being pushed as this is what we're doing. You know, then you can't go to the funeral, then you can't go to the, you know, it's like they were separating and they were downplaying the importance of human connection. You know, whereas that could be the most healing thing that there is.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
you know, that's one of the things that they've said, isn't it, about the blue zones, these people that live to a disproportionate age.
Yes.
You know, what is the common denominator amongst them? And it's human connection.
That's it.
You know, having the meals together, eating together, you know, working together, communicating, and family. You know, that was a big part of it. Actually, my good friend Tim Gray actually did a post about this today. You know, what is the thing that could potentially push you towards death 60% more than anything else? And that was lack of human connection.
Well, yeah. And that's exactly what happened, you know, during COVID. Don't go outside. Don't go in the sunlight. Don't get exercise.
Yeah.
You know, all these things that we know intuitively, we know that it's good for you.
Help. Yeah. And the crazy thing is that the liquor stores are open, fast food joints, you could go and get your fast food, or you can go and get it delivered, but the gyms are closed.
Yeah.
Like, go figure.
You talk about a giant contradiction and not reading the room of the world.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, of course.
what do people need? And they give you the opposite. And ultimately it's people too. We have to take responsibility as society because we allowed that to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, there were some of us that were speaking out. I was speaking out. I got banned, shadow banned on all my YouTube, my Instagram, everything, you know, because I was spreading misinformation.
Of course.
But now, you know, a lot of the things that I was suggesting.
Yeah, and
know,
everyone's posting about it now.
Turned about right.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, exactly. But you got ridiculed at the time, I'm sure.
oh man, yeah. It was. I just wanted people to die. Those type of comments, like,
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to die. Actually, just have a different idea behind, you know, than this craziness that we're we're experiencing. You were editor of bodybuilding.com. How did that start? Was that the biggest fitness site in the world for a while?
Biggest health and fitness site in the world. Yeah, it was absolutely unbelievable. Like when you said earlier about, you know, my video series getting over like 10 million downloads, it's more than that now, all because of bodybuilding.com. The traffic that they had was unbelievable, and the reason why I had some sort of recognition in India was because of that website as well. The conversion wasn't there from India when it came to purchasing supplements. It wasn't even in the top 10, but the traffic was. There was a lot of people there, but a lot of enthusiastic people as well. And so I had my own magazine, but I was contributing to a lot of other websites and magazines at the same time. And I was flying around the country for bodybuilding.com part-time, and I was writing for other publications covering bodybuilding shows as well. And I could get my content, pictures and articles to bodybuilding.com quicker than the other writers and photographers could get it on their websites. So that was attraction. And obviously I was publishing my own magazine. So Ryan DeLuca said, you could potentially be a good editor-in-chief. Do you want to go for the interview? Sure. So, because I wasn't really into LA, I liked it for its opportunities, but I'm not a city slicker by any means. You know, I like the Four Seasons, I like camping, I like mountain biking, I like snowboarding. And when I went for the interview in Boise, I was like, this is a place. I love this.
Yeah.
And, I remember Ryan DeLuca's then father, Russ, driving me around and said, yeah, see this traffic here? You won't have to deal with that because you're going the opposite way. I'm like, what traffic, dude? There's no traffic here. And it was cheap and whatnot. So, I got that position and moved to Boise, Idaho, and absolutely loved it. And, you know, when I started, there was about 30 of us in the office and the warehouse. And then by the time I left, there was about 500 people. It was just insane. The growth was out of this world.
What year was this?
2007.
2007.
2007. And, the thing with Ryan, he was definitely a visionary. You know, he would start up distribution centers right next to an airport so the shipping would be so quick. There was no Amazon then as well. And he would just provide free content. So I would do these video trainers. People like Jim Stepani, Steve Cook, Jamie Eason would all do these video trainers. And each one of these video trainers would cost a couple $100,000 to make, but he never charged the community at all. He would make his money basically off the selling of supplements and other vendors' supplements. That would make the money. And he was just building equity in the brand. And all the events like the Olympia, the Iron Classic, they were always the head sponsor. And it was crazy being on those booths because as soon as they opened the door, people would like sprint to the booth like it was a concert, you know, just to get the free shirt.
Oh, nice.
You know, but it was great branding and it was a great time. And we were putting out about 38 articles per week. Wow. Quite a lot of videos, podcasts, you know, it was a content hub. And the forum was the biggest forum in the world as well. And it was just absolutely nuts, but it was a great time.
And did he eventually sell?
He did sell. He sold it for like $500 million.
Nice job.
$500 million, yeah. And just went straight into VR at that time and built a company called Black Box VR, which is absolutely crazy because when I went and tried out the machine for the first time, I was like, I don't know if this is going to be the thing, cables, you know. But you're basically in a game, it's gamified. And, you know, you're bench pressing or you're punching and you're squatting to kill the opposition or to throw balls in this direction. And, you know, it works with AI, it understands your body over time, so it knows how much resistance and tension to give you. And it's a full-on, all-over body workout that's done in 35 minutes, but it feels like it's 10 because it's so entertaining.
Yeah. So, what is Black Box VR still?
Yeah.
Still around?
So yeah, he, like I said, he's ahead of his time. Like he has people like Tony Robbins and whatever that are customers, but he had a facility in he's got one in Boise, got one in San Francisco, I think one in Salt Lake possibly as well. So he's got these places where you can go in and train on these machines. But I know someone like Facebook, Google, whatever, they're going to acquire that company. I guarantee it.
You can't buy one of those machines.
Yeah,
from the
you
house?
can. Oh. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. You can buy one of those machines for sure.
Oh, nice.
I'd suggest that you come to Boise, try one out, and see if it rubs your rhubarb.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely want to check that out. I mean, that's the thing about working out that's been hard for me is, coming from a fighting background, I get on the mat, it flies by and it's fun. But when I go to a regular gym, I'm like, I mean, it's just like this. It's a mental battle. I'm not, and that's part of it. But so yeah, hearing like a VR thing, I'm like, oh, maybe that would be fun. And
I don't know anybody that's been in one that didn't enjoy it.
Really?
Yeah, it is really, really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. I was gonna say one of my friends, Chris Cavallini, he owns Nutrition Solutions, it's a food prep company. It's all the food down there. He had his back injected at CPI about 3 months ago, and life-changing from him, man.
Good, man.
So much better.
Yeah, it's incredible watching what the stem cells do for these disc patients because there's nothing worse than a herniated disc. Everywhere you move, it's like, ugh.
Yeah,
and,
for sure. Do you know, what's that wrestler's name from Mexico? Oscar? He was down there.
Yes.
Can you remember his name, babe?
He's the biggest one.
Yeah, he's only a little fellow, isn't he?
Yeah, Rey Mysterio.
That's it, Ray. Yeah. So he was there the first time that I was there, and we both know Chris really, really well, and we both convinced him to go there because Ray had his back injected as well, and it was great for him.
Yes.
So, it's phenomenal what you guys are doing down there, man. Like, I don't think I've got issues bad enough in my back to require injections, but everywhere else, it's been life changing, man.
Yeah. No, it's incredible watching. I'm like, what did you just came down for just regular overall health, correct? Or
no, I came down the first time. Is either 2020 or 2021? I'd torn my tricep off the bone, 68% of it, like completely off. And a lot of people don't come back from a tricep injury that bad. I had to have my tendons reattached. They had to drill through my humerus and ulna to reattach them. And I've torn a lot of stuff. Like, I was heliboarding in the Himalayas, tore my hamstring, tore my pec. A lot of this is not in the gym. It's always outside of the gym. So, separated both my AC joints a couple of times, mountain biking and surfing, torn stuff up all the time, man, a lot of the time. And it was the tricep was definitely the worst. So a year after the surgery, I was still only using like 25 to 30 pound dumbbells, and that was causing discomfort. I could literally press like that out very wide. I could not come in close because any of that downward pressure would just cause so much discomfort and pain. And so I came down and had the stem cells specifically for that. So at the time that I came down to CPI, I had about 70% discomfort and about 30% strength, if that. After 6 months, I now had like 70% strength back and less than 30% discomfort in just 6 months. And now I would never even know that I've had it torn.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's been absolutely phenomenal. And I really didn't think I was going to come back from that. I've come back from every other injury. I had stem cells like in my shoulders, in my knees. I've got a torn ACL and meniscus right now as we speak. But because I'm just having a stem cells in there, I'm avoiding the surgery and I'm just being very careful on my warm-ups, basically. If I run downhill for a duration of time, okay, I feel it. But I'm just doing whatever I can to avoid surgery now.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people do. You know, they'll do it to avoid surgery. I mean, if someone like for shoulders, if they don't have a complete tear in their labrum or rotator cuff, we can generally grow that back. Knees are a little bit different, especially like with the meniscus and those type of things. It's a little harder because of the shape of the meniscus. But ACL, if you still have a piece on there, we should be able to grow that sucker back.
Yeah.
We do it, you know, on a regular basis.
Well, one thing that really shocked me is that I had the stem cells in 2021 in my right leg. I had an MRI, obviously, to show that the cartilage was lessened quite a bit over the right. And a year after, that cartilage had come back.
Yep.
That was the crazy thing. I wasn't expecting that when I had that MRI.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't really necessarily have that much discomfort, but just to show that as a preventative, this really, really works as well. That was very, very helpful. And like, you know, I've torn my labrum, my rotator cuff. I currently have a torn supraspinatus and infraspinatus. But again, I'm avoiding the discomfort and the surgery because I've had surgery before. I've got this shoulder anchored down by having these stem cells, you know. And I think of it, of course, not just only as a cure. I want to get it done every, 3-4 years or whatever as a preventative because I know I'm not going to slow down.
Yes.
You know, but I don't want to pay the price when I'm older for what I'm doing to my body right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and like for getting injections in, let's say like the shoulders or the knees, you know, we can use like a PRP instead of the lysate, and you'll have less of a immune response, kind of less of an effect, but it's really great for maintenance.
Right.
So if you don't have a complete tear, you got a complete tear, you want to put some proteins or lysate in there because they really help the stem cells grow.
Got it.
You know, it makes a scaffolding system in there. You can still make a scaffold with the PRP, but it's just not as rich as that platelet lysate. Yeah. And the stem cells don't grow quite as well, but the good part is it doesn't hurt near as bad, and it doesn't cause, it doesn't take the 3 months to kind of immune response to recover from it.
Right. Okay.
So we do that a lot of times, with athletes. We'll switch to a PRP if they have a competition coming up.
Got it.
Our stem cells, and this isn't knocking anybody else and saying, oh, ours are so potent, but they really are so potent. They take, it's not one of those things. You're not going to grow back a labrum in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If you want the full effect, you've got to give the labrum the best chance to grow. And that is by putting the cells in that specific area, kind of keeping them in place and having all the fertilizer per se to allow those stem cells to grow.
Yeah. See,
yeah.
I don't mind the discomfort. Mm-hmm. I've got a high pain threshold anyway. That's what's got me in a lot of trouble in the past anyway with some of these injuries. I'm like, I'll be okay, but something's broken or torn. So I don't mind the injections. And I don't, of course, it's difficult taking a few months off training, hard training, but I have the discipline to do that and just go, you know what, I'll just do more cardio, more swimming, more cycling or whatever, yoga, whatever during that time. So I don't mind making that small sacrifice for the long-term success that I get out of it as opposed to doing the PRP because I don't have a competition.
Yeah.
But I can back off the training. Even though it is my mental therapy, I'll sidestep and just do something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've been going almost 2 hours, man. Anything, you want to bring up that we didn't talk about?
One of the events, I'm speaking at an event in Miami, the Miami Wellness Conference, 28th of September. I'm going to be in Dubai the week after the Olympia. Well, I'm at the Olympia, 10th to the 13th. And then that weekend after, I'm going to be at Dubai at the World Biohacking Summit.
What do you speak about? Like, what's the presentation about?
So that's going to be about health, longevity, and performance. So, a lot of people will go, oh, well, I'm not really into training. I don't want to look like a bodybuilder. Well, it's not about that. It's all about increasing your bone strength, increasing your confidence, your energy. But how can I do that in a healthy manner? Or particularly, I get people that show up to these biohacking events that are really into bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. Well, how can you combine both? It's like when we've done Ironmans, I've done video series to show how you can compete in endurance sports without sacrificing muscle. Because a lot of people are like 130 pounds or whatever, how can you do both? So I like to combine the both on those and how to use quantification to improve your longevity, but not get overwhelmed by it because a lot of people rely on technology a bit too much.
Yeah. Were you the most jacked Ironman person out there?
For sure.
For sure.
For sure. But it's cool because that community is so encouraging. They're like, great carbs, dude. Yeah, you're doing well, even though they're passing me. I like to participate. I'm not there to try to win anything.
Sure.
And I've tried it losing a lot of weight. I did it like fasting and on keto. I tried it, being bigger, 220 pounds. Didn't make any difference to me. So I was like, okay, I'll keep the muscle.
Wow.
And I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can only imagine. I would think that having that much muscle, you would get more tired.
For sure, it requires so much more oxygen and a lot more fuel. It's basically like I'm a moving buffet.
Right.
I'm just eating so much food just to get through this. But if I wanted to sacrifice muscle, maybe I wouldn't so much. But I don't want to. I like to combine both.
And tell us your website for the supplement company.
Unmatchedsups.com.
Unmatchedsups.com.
Yeah, don't get it mixed up like my dad says, unwanted.
Yeah. Make sure we won't do that. Well, Kris, thanks for coming. I'm happy that you're here, and hopefully, come back in 6 months or a year and we can do it again.
It's a pleasure, mate. Thank you ever so much for having me, Ed.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it, bud.